it's all right. Tell those people on the message boards to hey, go work out or something.
I'll let him know.
Yeah.
Appreciate it,
Cool.
Coach.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Coach. Welcome into the Bucks on the Pond podcast. We are here. Yes, we're getting swole. Shout out Cliff Godwin. That was for you. I'll make sure to send this video firsthand so he can at least appreciate it in case he doesn't watch the podcast. I did tell him
You don't think he's watching live?
I don't know. I told him at the selection show we had a special present for him with our workouts. So glad to come through with some workouts, and I gotta say, Scott Lorbatcher not only lifting the massive dumbbells, you got like 6 reps in. I don't even think I played the whole video, Scott. So you were getting after it, man. Jonathan Wagner, Scott Lorbatcher, Steve and I are here. Bucks on the Pond podcast. We are here, boys. So did you work up a sweat, Scott?
Yeah, I also jogged down to the gym to do the video. So, and by jog I mean ran full sprint because I'd been at the golf course all day. And my wife was ready for me to not be away from our children. So it was all I could do.
Well, and then, all right, so just to take you behind the scenes here. So I hit the pull-ups this morning. Wags initially wasn't – so we put together an initial video of Wags just drinking a protein shake. And but, hey, you rectified that. Good push-up for him, man.
Yeah, I was like, there's no chance in hell I am sending you a video of me working out. And, I'm a smaller guy. It takes a lot for me to get into a gym. So, but, I'm back in the gym now. But I decided last minute, and I'm like, maybe the protein shake isn't right for the show. Maybe if we get enough super chats in here, then maybe we'll show that video. But I decided that I would make it right, and I would get swole too.
You are on your way, man. Hey. In-home push-ups get the job done just as much as at the gym. So, well done, and proud of you, man. Proud of all of us for following through. I honestly, when I set out, we were going to originally do that for Sunday's show. I think we were all just like too lazy. So we were like, all right, Monday, let's try to get this montage going. I think we all did well. Anyways, guys, we've got, by the way, I should clarify before we get diving into this, as Jacob Smith points out. He says, sources told me Wags is famous these days. Someone would recognize him at the Canes game. And we discussed that last night, but as something just collapsed in Scott's house, we do have simultaneous Canes watching going on, specifically with Wags. So if you see Wags like looking out into the distance, he's just watching the Canes game. So 0-0 after one period, right, Wags?
Yep. Then just let it happen. If I go ask me a question and I kind of sit there and I turn back and look pissed off at him, just let it happen. Let me grieve, and whatever happens, happens.
We'll see how the Canes do. Maybe they can extend it to a Game 5. Anyways, gentlemen, we have a field of 64 to react to, and a lot to get into. Of course, we did a show last night kind of recapping more of ECU's championship run. So if you missed any of that, you can obviously go back and view that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, on the Hoisted Colors, social media pages, wherever. But the field is out, and East Carolina is heading to Conway. They're heading to Dirty Myrtle, and the Pirates will take on, obviously, number 2 seed Florida in the first round. Heck of a 2 seed. The 4 seed is Fairfield, kind of a dangerous 4. That is paired with Coastal. Coastal really got the shaft here. It feels like 13 overall seed when they were getting some national seed buzz. But initial takeaways on the bracket, specifically with the Conway region, we'll start with Scott.
Yeah, it kind of feels like Coastal got the shaft. We got in, 20 18 or 19 where we had like a top 10 or top 6 RPI, and we're still not a top 8 seed. And I feel for them because I think that was a bit harsh, especially 13. I don't think Coastal's anywhere near a 13 seed. But yeah, I mean it's a solid regional. It's another place with the beach that we cannot go to. So that's on you to ask that question as soon as you can.
Can't wait.
To coach about any beach time for the boys. But yeah, I mean, if you look at it, this is kind of the regionals that we've been in a lot, with a strong SEC 2 seed and then a 3 seed that is certainly capable of winning the whole thing. So we're playing with house money. You get Ethan Norby against the Florida Gators on Friday afternoon, and that should be a really, really fun watch.
Chad Tracy, is this the former ECU player / MLB player, Chad Tracy? If so, let us know. But appreciate you tuning in either way.
That's
he says, he says, will Cliff ban the beach / pool days again this week? I would assume so. Not to mention Conway is a good 30 minutes away from like true Myrtle Beach. So I'm going to shout out Kason Romeli. He has some sort of family beach house in North Myrtle that I'm planning to crash at. So I'm going to get some free lodging. So excited about that. But I don't think you'll see any beach time for the Pirates this week. Maybe if they win the entire regional, Cliff will let them go onto the beach then. All right, Wags, your takeaway from the Conway Regional.
Yeah, I think first I agree that Coastal's a little low. I think they had a shot for top 8, but I think I had them as my 10 seed going in to the day. So I was surprised that I didn't think they'd be any lower than 10. I think it's just, they had 5 quad 1 wins, and compared to the other teams, it is what it is, but they might be the hottest team in baseball right now. I think they have the most wins in college baseball. If not, they're right there. So that's a good team, and it's a really good one. I think a lot of people might look at it and say, "Oh man, we got off easy with Coastal's our one," but they're no joke. They're a really good team, and obviously Florida. Florida they started off really bad, and I think they started off 1-11 in the SEC, and they finished 15-15. So they got hot, and they got hot while dealing with a lot of injuries. I think they're probably the most injured team in college baseball right now, and to the point their last regular season series, they were burning red shirts off of guys off the bench because they literally had no one else to go in. So it's going to be tough, but like everyone's saying, we're playing with house money. We shouldn't be here, and we're here now. Nobody's going to pick us, and nobody picked us in Clearwater. So who knows? You never know what happens. You just got to go out there, and everyone's got to do their job.
Yeah, I do think ECU's in a great spot. Just from we kind of talked about it yesterday, but from a under the radar perspective, somebody mentioned the odds. By the way, Chad Tracy does say it is that Chad Tracy says coaching my daughter's softball teams as of late, just getting back into watching Pirate baseball this year. Yeah, Ella Tracy will be. She is on her way to ECU softball. She will be on the team next year of ECU signees. So excited to have another Tracy in the purple and gold. So appreciate you tuning in, Chad, and always great to catch up. All right. So the odds for the regional guys: Coastal the favorite, Florida at plus 115 according to Jackson Allsbrook, Coastal at minus 125, ECU at plus 1100, Fairfield at plus 3000. So yeah, I mean I get it. Look, especially from an ECU perspective, having to go through Florida and Coastal, I mean that's a tall order. Like I think ECU could definitely win one. I mean, could they win both? Could they knock out both? Certainly, but it's just going to be a tall task on the road. Florida, we know, has national championship pedigree, national championship talent. Now, they are banged up. We'll get into more of that as the show progresses. And then Coastal Carolina, they're at home. They've had a phenomenal year. And if you're not familiar with this year's Coastal, if you did watch the series early in the year, Coastal can pitch. Usually they are a mashing baseball team. Very reliant on the home run ball, very reliant on scoring runs. This year, they are legitimately deep on the mound. They have 3 really good starters. Florida has some high-end pitching as well, as you would expect. They also have some big-time power. And then ECU, I would say, has a couple of good pitchers, some high-end guys. Some have been inconsistent times. Then offensively, they've picked it up here as of late. But, definitely probably the 3rd best offensive team in the region. And then Fairfield's a solid 4. So do you agree with those odds? Scott, I would say Florida's probably the best team, or at least the most talent, and then, we'll see how it plays out. But Coastal being at home, obviously a big factor.
Yeah, well, so I'm looking at it on DraftKings now because that ECU at plus 1100 seemed like a lot. So if you had that line, I would probably throw 10, $15 on that, But what I have is Coastal at plus 105, Florida plus 130, ECU at plus 650, and Fairfield at plus 1500.
Jackson, where are these odds coming from? Let us know.
Which the odds I'm seeing on DraftKings are pretty similar to what the odds were for our regional last year with us and Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest was actually favored in our regional to start. Yeah, I mean, plus 650 sounds about right, I would say, for ECU. And I would put Coastal and Florida at almost a push, comparing one to the other. I think, just on paper, those are clearly the two best teams in this regional. And then, Fairfield is a team that I'm excited to see because I've never actually watched them play before, but it was a year or two ago that they went on like a season-long run where I think they lost one game the entire regular season. So, just four good programs. And, yeah, if you get ECU at a plus 1,000 or more, I mean, you might as well throw a few dollars on that. That's an insane line.
Jackson says FanDuel is where he pulled his odds from. So I guess if you want to throw some money on the Pirates, pull up FanDuel if you can. Chuck says the odds for ECU to win the College World Series is plus 550. I'm going to guess it's a lot higher than plus 550.
I saw it at plus 50,000.
Wait, what?
The last time I saw it.
People are taking the alternate lines, apparently. I don't look like you've done a better job of following the national picture just with your work at On3. Florida, we've had some of their fans come to the message board and talk about how banged up they are. Their catcher just broke his forearm, so he is out for the season. Their stud shortstop, who's hitting like 370, has missed the last month or so. And they've had some other guys in and out of the lineup. But what's kind of your take, your vibe with Florida, despite the injuries and some of their key pieces to look out for?
Yeah, I think they're, like you said, they're definitely the most talented team in this regional. And if I was predicting someone to win as of right now, then I'm probably going to pick them. But yeah, like I said earlier, they're super injured. Their last series against Alabama, like I said, they had a guy on their team, Blake Brookins, who was playing in the redshirt, hadn't played all year. And like I said, they had nobody left on the bench. They had two guys get hurt in the same game, and they were forced to put someone in there. And so that kind of shows you where they're at, that you're burning redshirts for guys. And is Blake Brookins a household name? No, I don't think so. But at the same time, it just speaks to that. And you mentioned the guys pitching. Colby Shelton's really good. Luke Hammond's really good. They're both hurt, big losses. But to me, I think the most notable injury on their team is Pierce Coppola, however you say that. He is a starting pitcher, and he is probably their best pitcher on their team, but he's been limited to, I'm looking at it now, to 19 innings this year. He's made 6 starts. He's made 3 starts since the start of this month, and in each start, he started off and he threw 1 inning, he threw 2 innings, he threw 3 2/3 innings. So he's working his way back up, but his ERA on the season is a 1.86, and he's got really good stuff. I think he could give fits to this lineup, to ECU specifically. So he's a guy I wouldn't rule out, maybe starting the first game, and maybe Florida tries to get their top 2 guys through with the next 2. So they're really good, but yeah, it's just, you never know with all these guys injured if they try to come back for the regional, and maybe they're a little rusty because I haven't seen live game action in a while. It could work to ECU's favor, but it's still, they're really good. And if they do come back and they don't miss a beat, then ECU might be in trouble.
Yeah, Pierce Coppola, or however you say it, is 6'8", 245. That is a massive human being. Their number one starter of late has been Liam Peterson, who has tremendous stuff, 95 strikeouts in 68 innings, 32 walks, 239 batting average against. Now, he has been prone to the long ball, as typically is the nature of guys with big velocity. When they miss, it can go a long way if a guy barrels it up. 4.10 ERA, 8-3 record. Aiden King is a freshman more pitchability guy. He's been more their number 2 lately. 72 Ks and 65 and 21 walks, 220 batting average against 6-2 with a 2.76 ERA. So they've got 2 frontline starters, and they have a guy, Jake Clemente, at the back end of the bullpen, 7 saves, 74 strikeouts in 50 innings. Guys, they have struck out 621 hitters in 482 innings compared to 236 walks. So, I mean, their strikeout numbers are ridiculous. But it's baseball. Anything can happen. And, look, I would not take ECU in a series against Florida. And maybe to win this regional, they have to beat them twice. But, like, for a one-off game at 12 noon at a neutral site where I think ECU will have more fans, I think ECU's got a fair shake here. Like, am I going to pick them to win? I don't know. We'll make our predictions later. But, like, I feel decent about this game, which, like, if you would have told me ECU had to play Florida in the postseason a few weeks ago, I would have just been like, oh, God, that would be ugly. But I don't know. Like, I kind of have a weird feeling the Pirates are going to show up and be ready to roll, Scott.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you got Ethan Norby on the mound, right? I mean, this is a guy who struck out 19 batters in a game this season. So if he's on and he's at his best, you have a chance. And for Florida, they haven't played for it'll be 9 days in between games for them. So, a lot of time off is not always the best thing for a baseball team. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. If 3-game series, no way. I don't think there's a way that we could find a way through Florida twice in 3 games. But in a single game with Ethan Norby on the mound and Ethan Young pitching as well as he has all year, you certainly have a shot. And, we've been in enough of these regionals to know that winning the first game is immensely important, because if you win the first one, you never know who the team is that you're going to play in the second game. Fairfield could very much upset Coastal, and if it's an ECU Fairfield semifinal game or second game or whatever, I don't know how to turn out. Game 3, you never know. We could come right out of it. So, Florida's obviously super talented, but the Pirates can play with anybody. Florida did lose to South Florida this year, so team we just beat.
And, I mean, with the injuries, the uncertainty, starting catcher going out, and look, as the Wag said, like, they have a guy who's played some, but, like, anytime you lose your starting catcher, your horse, a guy with 13 home runs, your shortstop is banged up. Bobby Bozer, former USF standout, is, one of their best hitters. I didn't know he was this good. 330, 16 home runs in the SEC. Like, that's pretty damn impressive USF transfer. But, like, at the end of the day, I mean, it's baseball. I don't think ECU is going to be intimidated. If you were going down to Florida to take them out in their home field, maybe take them on their home field, maybe it'd be a different story. But, like, I expect ECU to be go. And how surprised were you, Wags, that Coastal chose the night game? It sounds like they want their fans as engaged as possible. But if ECU could win that first game, that then gives them a full day and a half to sit back and watch. I mean, that would be a potentially big advantage. And even if you lose, it gives you time to bounce back.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a very strong believer in the idea that if you are the 1 seed, you pick the early game just because you get it out of the way, especially in a week like this where there's some weather that looks like might impact, middle of the week, maybe into the weekend potentially. We'll see how it happens. But just to eliminate risk and make sure you're getting your game in first, you don't have to sit around waiting all day for a first game that you're not playing in, potentially having delays, and then you start at who knows what time, and it just throws off your whole weekend. So I was a little surprised, but I also get it from that standpoint too. You want your fans, especially for a team like Coastal, and you're playing Fairfield. No disrespect to Fairfield, but, like, that game is not the draw of this weekend. And the draw of Friday is ECU in Florida. And then most people are going to predict Coastal and Florida to move on to the winners bracket, and that's going to be the headline of the second game. So I don't really blame them for trying to drive up fan interest and, giving them the prime slot. But yeah, it's a huge advantage for ECU if they take advantage of it, and that's the big thing. You've got to come out and you've got to win. And again, nobody's going to pick them to, but again, you're not supposed to be here. Nobody thought you would be here. So use that to your advantage. Same mindset you had in Clearwater, and you understand what's at stake. Again, it's win or go home. So go out and just put everything you have on the line, and who knows.
Before we do move further, I want to remind folks we do have our super chats activated on YouTube. Yesterday we had like 10 people who activated a super chat, which is where you can go and show your support for the show. If you go to our YouTube page, there's a little in the comment live chat at the bottom, there's a little dollar sign. You can give as little as $1 to support these guys, mainly Scott and Jonathan. They do this out of the kindness of their heart, and now I can hold them hostage because they actually are getting paid at least a small amount. Which is why I demanded they worked out today. So that was part of your super chats went to their gym membership. So
I'm gonna hold out for a new contract. I want to raise.
Appreciate everybody tuning in and supporting that way. Yeah. So I have not dove into the analytics. We did have some Florida fans come to the site today that said they are worried about the matchup after seeing Norby's numbers because they have really struggled against left-handed pitching. And with their injuries, they at times have had 4 and 5 lefties in the lineup at the same time. So it seems to be a potentially favorable matchup. The problem is if you're ECU, you don't really have a left-handed reliever you can rely on. I mean, you have Nick Moran, and we haven't seen him pitch in how long. But, I guess Norby is he's a pretty splits-heavy guy. Like, he historically struggles against righties because he's mainly fastball slider. His changeup is hit or miss. So he is a guy who he's getting killed in the comments. Made me laugh. Sorry. He's a guy that traditionally really can carve up lefties, as he did against Coastal Carolina, which had a lefty-heavy lineup earlier this season. So I think that's a big boon potentially. I guess how much concern do we have about the workload? I mean, he pitched 3 times since last Tuesday. He had over 160 pitches during that time. So is that a concern for you, Scott, heading into this regional?
Yeah, and I think this is part of the reason why I do like Coastal's decision to play the second game is we saw last year with ECU and Wake Forest. If ECU upsets Florida in game 1 because Norby's on, then if you're Coastal, maybe you do go to your ace for game 1 instead of saving it for Florida. But, yeah, I mean, I do think Norby is a guy that when the lights come on, he comes on and can find that extra little bit of gas that maybe you wouldn't have in a regular season game as well, though. Like you were saying, not having a second lefty, we're going to need him to give us a ton of length, which we're going to need him to do that whether no matter what. Because if we want to win the regional, we're going to need kind of the same thing that we just had in Clearwater, where those 7 guys that pitched are going to have to really, really give it their all and be on top of their game the entire weekend.
All right, so somebody asked who is Florida's ace, John. I kind of just hit that, but just as a recapper, they really have 2 guys who they have 3 starters who have started games recently, and as Wags mentioned, Pierce Coppola is maybe their biggest current prospect because he's a redshirt junior, 6'8" lefty, but he's coming back from injury. He started 6 games. He's 3-0 with a 1.86 ERA, but he's been managed. Liam Peterson, hard-throwing righty, has been mainly their Friday night guy, and then Aiden King, another right-hander, has also been a guy. So those 3 starters are legit, and then they got some back-end bullpen guys. So whoever they throw is going to be a tough matchup for the Pirates. Anything else on the ECU/Conway front, guys? We'll start with Wags that we haven't hit on. Anything else intrigue you about this regional?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the obvious, but ECU has seen this Coastal team this season. So, that was 2 out of 3 we lost. And
the last game was extra innings, right?
Yeah. And granted, the first game was a colossal blowout, even though the score doesn't really show how bad it really was. It was a bad game. So you kind of saw all ends of the spectrum. You lost a game bad, you lost a tight game, and you won a game. So you've shown you can beat Coastal. So I think if ECU does get into a situation where, whether it's the winner's bracket or the loser's bracket, they're facing Coastal, then I think they're going to be pretty confident. They're going to say, we've seen this team. We know we can beat them. Let's just go do it. But But really, my biggest takeaway of everything you just said, Igo, about all these some Florida fans being a little scared about lefty matchups against our lineup, it sounds like it might be time for me to bring back a Gabe Beschloss prediction this week. I'm not actually doing that. Don't worry.
Okay. I was like, man, that's going to be a heck of a bold prediction right there.
If I did that, kick me off the pod and don't bring me back next year. All the proceeds go to Scott.
Shout out to Bob Gagnon, who has come in with a 1999 super chat. Bob, we appreciate you with your support. He says, go enjoy a cold beer and dog at Sup Dogs for all you do to keep us informed. Well, I appreciate you, Bob. That means a lot, and I will pass that along to Scott and Wags. Shout out Sup Dogs, by the way, who supported our watch along last week and do amazing things for ECU Athletics. So Bob Gagnon coming in big. Appreciate you and your support of the podcast. Will Landon says, I don't think Florida is used to seeing small ball. Not a lot of 3 and 4 hole hitters in the FCC laying down bunts. Yeah, I mean, is it time to test cliff ball against the SEC? I mean, I feel like it's been a while since we saw like these. I don't know we saw Wake last year. It's been some time.
South Carolina a couple years ago.
Oklahoma or Charlottesville regional.
That's not an SEC team.
It doesn't count.
Oh, yeah, I guess they were in the Big 12 then.
That was not an SEC baseball team, I can tell you that.
Yeah. They will never count.
Which they are at least better this year. But yeah, that year they were not impressive. All right, Ashley says, I wish they would stay away from regular season repeats in the regional. I think they try for the most part, but it's hard. And Child Please says, Wags pick Tulane to win. Child Please.
Look, so, you guys can vouch for me. That was all part of a plan. I said that if I pick ECU to win in my last field, then we all know what's going to happen, and it would be that Tulane wins. So there's text evidence of this. I told you guys that was my reasoning, and my defense for it could always be, if I have to, that Tulane's the higher seed. But I knew what I was doing there, and it worked.
All reverse psychology. A lot of Wags, you're getting shredded in the comments. I really thought that hitting the push-ups over the protein shake would heal you, but it has not. All right, Chuck with a valid question here.
You know who's not getting cooked, Igo? The Canes in Game 4, because they are outplaying the Panthers and just took a 1-0 lead. My GOAT, Logan Stankoven.
There's still time to lose.
Or was it Nikishin?
I mean,
either way, Canes in 7.
Reverse
Panthers in 4.
Yeah, it's 1-0 midway through the second period. Chuck says, if we win Game 1, who do you pitch Game 2? I mean, I think with this staff, it just depends on who you use. Because, like, obviously, if Norby throws a complete game shutout, then like you could throw Young, Pruitt, whoever. I think the 3 guys I trust most right now are Norby, Young, and Pruitt in that order. Obviously, Hunter's in there as well. Unless he's dead tired, he's going to throw strikes. Beyond that, I trust Jenkins as well in certain spots, Lance Williams. But, it just depends on who you use, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things I think it's worth, discussing. Obviously, I think your best chance of winning is Ethan Norby starting on Friday and giving you 7-8 really good innings, if not the whole game. But, I don't think it's crazy to at least consider, having Norby as an option every day. And again, that's not what I would do. I would start him on Friday and not think twice about it. But I do think it's worth considering. I don't know who you start if you do that, but if you go something like, I don't know, screw it, you just throw Ethan Young out there Game 1 and you throw your second best arm, and then Norby comes out of the pen however you need him to and goes however long you need him to, and then he's available again. So it's worth discussing. Again, it's not what I would do, but I don't think it's the craziest idea in the world.
Trey Daly, who coached Ethan with the dirtbag, says Norby makes 4 appearances this weekend. Bold prediction. So wasn't that a prediction of one of you guys earlier this year, where Norby would pitch in every game out of the bullpen, or was that somebody else?
I definitely went that way at one point.
I mean, if he we all love Norby out of the bullpen. like in an ideal world, you would have a frontline guy and you could go to Norby at first trouble. But I just don't like who are you going to trust in that spot to like open a regional? You know,
I think
I don't
Florida
know.
is by far the most talented top to bottom team in this regional, and your best chance of winning it is beating them game one and giving Norby the ball and letting him go as long as you can is going to give you the best chance to beat them. So I just don't see any other way around it.
And just let them throw every in the entire regional.
Old school baseball.
Yeah.
If this was
Take us back to 1920.
25, he would be doing that.
JPN says, if no Hunter Friday, I start Hunter Saturday. Will Landon says, what do we think about starting Ethan Young? I mean, I don't hate it, but the one time he started this year, I believe he had one start. It was pretty bad, right?
Yeah, and Pruitt was good the first time he started and then was bad after. So, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like either of those guys have been able to translate their abilities to pitch in long relief to starting games, which is kind of odd, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's just been a weird year on that front. Like, you honestly have 5-6 pitchers you trust, which is, I would say, kind of the norm if you don't follow college baseball. But, like, for whatever reason, you trust, I guess, now you trust Jenkins to start after what he did in the championship game. I think he's back in that. You trust him to start. But Child Police says, got to get 7 innings from Norby. Bob, who had our super chat earlier, says, any chance Ryan Towers pitches this weekend? Is he healthy enough to pitch? I hope not, if we can count on him returning next year. My understanding is he has been shut down and will not pitch this year, and the plan is to have him back next year, along with Brett Antoluk, the Texas A&M transfer. Shout out Brian Wallace, who has delivered a super chat. Thanks for keeping us entertained, says Brian. Brian, appreciate you supporting the pod once again, man. Means a lot, and thanks for tuning in, Brian Wallace. So I think overall, look, this is a tough regional draw. As we'll talk more about the Conway regional at the end and circle back. I do want to talk about the rest of the field, but I kind of had a feeling ECU was going to see an SEC school on the 2 line. I just didn't know if it would be Florida, which is like really damn good, but you're with house money at this point. And Wags, it's just like, I feel like this team, Cliff got the team together right after the viewing party and delivered him a message. And he told us after that this is, for ECU baseball, the team that goes into the postseason, arguably in program history, with the least pressure, given how the season unfolded and given nobody really expected him to be here. So could this manifest into a story? Each win, you build momentum. Let's say, somebody chatted earlier, if you beat Florida, I think you win the regional because of the momentum. I don't disagree with that, but it does feel like it is kind of building to that, and it's just a matter of can ECU find a way to keep it going.
Yeah, it's just, I think the story of this season has been that when this team does seemingly break through and they have that good week, they have that good game, can they follow it up whether that's the next day or the next weekend? And so far this season, the answer has been no. And this week, finally, the answer was yes. It was game to game. They finally carried it over. So it's just, you have to carry it over again into a weekend against a much better team. And do I think they're going to? I think it's going to be a really tough road. But again, like we've been saying, we talked about it last night, and this is your team now. And there are some guys that are no longer here, no longer on the team. And I think now they kind of understand, like, this is our group. Nobody else matters anymore. Nobody else on the other teams matters. Nobody outside of our locker room matters, and no players that aren't here anymore matter. Who cares? And now it's just, you have our group. You know who you're going to build with. You know who you're going to play with every day. And you know exactly what you need to do. Everyone's got to do it. And again, it's house money. You're not supposed to be here. Nobody thought you would be. And just, you proved them wrong last week. You proved me and I go wrong last week. You proved Scott correct last week in Clearwater. But again, I think it's going to be a similar thing this week. I'm probably not going to pick them to win the regional, but if they come through and they beat Florida in game 1, then I think it completely changes the picture. And I think if you do win that game, then I think you do have a legitimate chance. But it's all about game one. You've got to carry the momentum over. And I'm kind of at the spot where I'll believe it when I see it. But I'm hopeful, but cautiously.
We'll just keep saying that all the way to Omaha. I believe it when I see it. I believe it when I see it. Yeah, a couple lineup changes says Zai made the difference. And, yeah, the insertion of Dixon Williams at shortstop, I think, has made a huge difference for a variety of reasons that we kind of touched on yesterday. But I did ask about Braxton Trammell's status, and Cliff said it doesn't sound like he will be back, Scott, for the regional. He said outside chance at a super regional. So I think we can kind of cross that off the list unless he's just playing coy, which, Cliff typically does not do with injuries. He's usually pretty straight up. So it sounds like ECU will not get Trammell back, which we were kind of texting earlier. If you had Trammell and a healthy Riley Johnson, that would, plus the move of Dixon to shortstop, I think that would make you like a legitimate regional contender, whereas now you still have a hole or two in your lineup.
Yeah, I do agree. I think Trammell would put us in a position offensively to where I would feel a lot more confident about our ability to score runs. And I think we need to score, more than 4, more than 5 runs to beat Florida. And with this lineup right now, I think that's going to be really hard to do. Not impossible, though. And another part of that is I think Dixon Williams needs to get back into hitting doubles and not trying to hit the ball over the fence. It kind of felt like after the first game in Clearwater, his swing started to get a little bit more vertical, and he's trying to get underneath the ball. I guess when you hit the ball off the fence 3 times, you just want to see one go over it. But we do need doubles Dixon Williams as much as anything, hitting line drives in the gaps. And we need Riley Johnson. I know he's not going to be 100% healthy, but his ability to hit the ball the other way and put it in play has been huge, and it's made a really big difference if you just 1-to-1 it with Boucher in the lineup versus Riley Johnson, right? Boucher was a guy that had been striking out a ton. Riley Johnson's a guy that's going to put the ball in play, and we're putting the pressure on other teams' defense. And on the flip side of that, our defense has significantly improved this last week, and I really, really hope that carries over into Conway.
All right, Ashley says, any more information on the player dismissed in Clearwater? I hinted that the player on, I think, yesterday's show, it's all running together, but Drew Downs was either dismissed or left the team. From my understanding, was let go of the team in Clearwater, freshman outfielder. I don't know the exact story, so I'm not going to share what I heard without confirming it, but basically there was some stuff going on, nothing like egregious, but essentially both sides just decided it was time to part ways, and the portal's opening or has opened, and so he is off the team. That does leave you with just a handful of outfielders. With Burris moving to second, you've got obviously Riley in center, Peltier, who can play the center as well as the corners, and then obviously you got Jack Heron right now in right, and then Davin Whitaker off the bench, and that's kind of it. That's the only 4 guys who were in the outfield meetings prior to the conference championship. Now Braden can go out there. Boucher is a guy that Cliff has said could go out there, but you're just down to 27 guys, and that's just where you are right now. The bold prediction from Casey O'Malley says Alex Boucher will have a clutch hit or 2 this weekend. He's pulling from the Wags. Was this Wags or was this?
That was Wags. The Wags bucket of tricks right there.
Yeah. So he's going back to that. Look, I still think if you need some pop and a left-handed pitcher's on the mound, it makes sense to see Boucher in a spot where he gets a hit. Like, he'll have an at-bat during this regional, I'm pretty sure, Wags.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of those things that obviously I think you're going to see the same lineup and the same starting 9 that you saw all week in Clearwater with Alex Peltier in left. And you're probably going to see that for at least the first game and probably throughout the regional, just because I think that was probably your best configured lineup, 1 through 9 that we've seen. And it's one of those things, if you're late game with a runner on and you're down by a run and say Peltier comes up and it's a lefty, and I'd probably go to Boucher. And then you just figure it out from there. And if there's one thing we know that Cliff Godwin can do, it is manage a team in the late innings. And I might say overmanage, but he's going to figure it out. He's going to have someone that can go out there and play. And who knows? Maybe that's Boucher himself. Maybe he goes out there and plays left field for the first time of the season in a regional. But, I agree. I think you're going to see Boucher at some point. He's going to pinch hit. I don't think he's going to start. But, yeah, you're going to see Boucher because you're going to have more guys than just your 9. I think the Charlotte game in Clearwater was probably the first time all season. If not, if it wasn't, there's only a handful where ECU did not use any position players off the bench. And I don't think you're going to see that once this weekend. I think you're going to have a lot of, pinch hits, a lot of defense replacements, and you're going to really try to put yourself in the best position in the late game. And, that creates a whole nother conversation too. But, Alex Boucher is going to get an opportunity, and I hope he comes through.
All right, Brian Wallace says, I'll give another $4.99 if I go ask Cliff Godwin about beach time again. So I'm sure we'll have another media availability. I think Cliff has said the word IGO at least 45 times in his press conferences, and he keeps bringing up the beach. So, should I just ask about it at this point? I feel like I kind of am obligated. Coach, you're going back to Dirty Myrtle. You going to spend any time out on the beaches? I mean, I know the answer, but at this point, it's kind of becoming a running gag. So why not?
I feel like it's a good way to wrap up a press conference. Just one, any last questions? It's like, Coach, you plan on getting to the beach? I also saw a chat earlier where someone said, if we sweep this weekend, would Igo switch his allegiance to the Diamondbacks? I will tell you right now, if we sweep this weekend, I will switch my allegiance to the Diamondbacks in a second. So I'm all in on that deal.
So Igo, on that note, will it make it easier for you to do that after the Nats sweep your Mariners this week?
Oh my God! I mean, there is absolutely zero shot of that happening. First off,
hey, the Nats are playing some good baseball right now.
The Nats have to come to Seattle. If the Nats come to Seattle, I will do half my show next week shirtless, the other half wearing a Nat shirt if they sweep that series.
And hey, don't you have an MLB debut tomorrow on the mound? I think I saw that somewhere.
I don't even know. I've been so busy today.
Yeah. I saw it yesterday or something.
I thought we were the Nats Mariners series travelers.
We should be in Seattle. Right now, it's Parker for the Nats versus TBD for Seattle,
okay.
At least according to my MLB at Bat app. So, but we'll see how that series goes down. I think if Seattle wins 2 out of 3, that locks up the Bucks on the Pond trophy for yours truly. So
it has to, yeah.
Yep. All right, back to things that people care about in the chat. We have another super chat from Noah Callum, who is our leading all-time super chatter. This makes 3. He sends one in. Noah, appreciate you. Thank you for your support of the program. Means a lot, man, and obviously is critical. All right, so somebody asked how much did Downs play this year. Downs was more of a defensive replacement base running guy. He played in 32 games, 14 starts, had 40 at-bats, 7 hits. He had 1 double and 1 RBI. And 5 sacrifice bunts. So there's your Drew. I mean, I think outside of having a little bit more versatility, no offense to Drew Downs, who I think has a chance to be good down the line, I don't think you're going to miss him that much. But that goes into the talk of how many bench guys are left. Boucher, Whitaker, Nick Parham, and Kalinich. I don't know what Chance Hall's status is. He has been utilized as a pinch runner at times this year. Roger Vergara has been with the team as well as a backup infielder, so I would assume he is another guy you can utilize off the bench. Parker Burge has been with the team. So I think those are – am I missing anybody, guys, that comes to mind? I'm looking through the roster now, not seeing anybody. It's a pretty short bench.
Yeah, and I like that. I think it's to this team's benefit to have less guys. I do think, guys like Vergara and Boucher certainly have, their roles on this team. But I think anytime you bring 30 players in, everybody's not going to fit. And getting the people who don't fit out of the way so you can focus on the pieces that do, I think it is a huge benefit to this team. And, they look better in Clearwater after everything that went down with, having to dismiss a player and, really hunker down and win that tournament. So, I think it's great. You don't need a ton of guys in baseball. I mean, obviously, we get into a 16-inning game for some reason. Like, it may not be putting us in a great spot, but I don't think we need a ton of guys.
All right. Johnny Robertson says, what is the situation with David Lillis? Could he be reinstated to the active roster for emergency depth? Last I heard, David Lillis is redshirting, and I think he's already playing with the Garden Gnomes. So I don't know. Like, can you recall a guy from the Summer League Garden Gnomes? I don't know the official ruling on that. He's still on the ECU roster online. I assume he's still in school. I would assume he could be activated, but yeah, that's a decent question. I will try to figure out I would try to get to the bottom of that. By the way, the Canes have a 1-0 lead at the end of 2 periods for those monitoring, especially Wags. So 1 period away from extending the series. How nervous are you?
I'm playing with house money.
Are you just like the Pirates?
A ton of house money right now. He's bathing in house money.
I fully expect to lose this game by multiple goals still because I've lost all my confidence, but winning this game will not change my prediction on the series as it currently stands, and it is that the Panthers will win, and it will not take more than a game or 2. And just to clarify what I said earlier, it is Logan Evans who has made multiple starts this year. Okay. The tweet I saw was poorly worded, and it is his first start against the Nats. So whoever tweeted that, I hate you.
I mean, yeah, it's a young pitcher. Of course he hasn't started against the Nats. It's an interleague series. It gets played once a year. Whatever. People be tripping. Fake Bunt says Mike K is around. This is not Mike Krzyzewski, but I assume he's referencing Michael Kalinich. So not Coach K, but
Coach K at bat.
Kalinich, yeah, he's been around. So, all right, Cliff has referenced, says Seatown Pirate, the drama several times this week. He comments, is it more than the Drew Downs departure? I think there's been steady drama throughout the year at times. Again, I don't know what all is happening behind the scenes. I will say I have heard some stuff that I'm not going to get into because I have not confirmed it of what happened down in Clearwater with several meetings taking place. But whatever happened, it worked out. And I think the roster has been condensed and you've seen this team come together. It's, as Cliff said today, there were things that happened that only the team needs to know about, and I think it's going to stay that way. Like, obviously, I have sources, you hear stuff, but it's hard to get something like that confirmed. But maybe after the season, that's something we can dive into. But definitely something went down. All right, Cameron says Florida is the most talented team we've played all year. They would be a top 10 team if they didn't have injuries. Chris says, Wags, would you rather get ECU to Omaha or Canes to come back to win the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't ask that so I wouldn't get in trouble on this podcast, but the answer is, without hesitation, the Canes come back and win the Cup. All right, I'm going to bed. But look, the Canes and ECU are like my 2 top teams, I would say, in my pecking order of teams I root for. But the Canes are one; they always have been. I wouldn't be in the career that I am right now without the Canes. So
this is true.
They're always Igo wouldn't have hired me if the Canes weren't here.
This is very true.
And nice profile picture, Alex.
Yeah. So I had to do that. Look,
it's fair.
I understand it as somebody who has allegiance to pro teams. Jake wants you to walk the plank. Les says you're dead to me. You should have just gone with the protein shake video.
I understand it, That's why I didn't want you to ask the question. I should have just said ECU anyways and told you.
To be fair, it is ECU to Omaha, meaning that we don't necessarily win at all. We just are in the top 8 compared to Canes actually.
That's definitely what was in my head when I answered that question. Yeah. Thank you, Scott.
So to clarify, if you could guarantee an ECU national championship.
To be fair, if the Cincinnati Reds, if it meant they didn't win another game the rest of the season, I would take that if it meant ECU to go to Omaha.
Yeah. So you would take. Let's see what their record is now.
I think they're 26-28, but I don't know what they did today.
They won.
Okay,
You would take
27-28.
27 wins versus 140, 138 losses, whatever. I can't do math, but whatever.
135 losses. Then they'd
Yeah.
still be like 2 games up on the Rockies. So
This is very true.
Poor Zach.
All right. We got to give all the super chat money to Scott now. So sorry, Wags. Hope it was worth it, man.
I guess
do wanna go back to
I'm not getting a
something.
backdrop, I guess. Sorry.
Someone said Florida is the most talented team that we will face this year. But we did play North Carolina.
They're pretty damn
And
good.
they're
Yeah.
pretty daggone good. So I don't know that that's necessarily true, especially on the mound. I think UNC is every bit as talented as Florida is. Maybe depth-wise, Florida has more talent, but as far as the night on the field, UNC and Florida are probably pretty comparable.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, North Carolina has pitched all year at an elite level, and they've got a pretty pesky offense with enough power. So they're a legitimate national title contender, whereas talent-wise, I do agree Florida has more pure talent if healthy, but at this stage, yeah, they've had too many injuries. All right, super chat in from A-Win in Florida says, "Sup crush for Scott." Appreciate you, A-Win, for tuning in. And they also said earlier that you need to wear earmuffs in the Coastal bullpen. So it'll be fun to see. Hopefully we get ECU Coastal and we get to see East Carolina, have to deal with the crowd, because I think it would be interesting to see how the Pirates respond to that type of hostile environment, because usually they're on the receiving end of having that at their support. All right, let's look at some of the other brackets, or just the bracket as a whole, and we won't go through all of them because we'll go all night. But anything else stand out to you guys? We'll start with Jonathan, just in terms of, you could go any storyline, any regional you're really looking forward to. What stood out for you from the non-Conway field?
Yeah, I mean, the first regional that stands out to me is the Hattiesburg Super Regional, and Southern Miss ended up being the 16th overall seed. And just, and I won't go too long on this, but I was surprised personally to see the Sun Belt get two hosts. And I think Southern Miss is good and they're good enough, but the Sun Belt only got those 2 teams in the tournament. And so I was surprised, given what we've seen from the committee in recent years, that the Big 12, who got 8 bids, that did not get a host when they had a hosting worthy team. So I was surprised by that. But, looking around at the regionals, I think that Hattiesburg regional is a good one. Alabama's a good team. Alabama had a case to host. They were below the other teams, but they were right there in that group of teams right below them. Miami's a solid team at 3, and that's one of those regionals where I think 3 teams can win. And then, I mean, there's a lot of good ones. Obviously, there's a storyline with, a potential ECU NC State Super, or an ECU versus Bristol Carter Super. So that's something to watch. But there's a lot of fun ones, and Tennessee Wake Forest will be a fun one too. So, and I'm sure I'll talk about this more tomorrow on the PJ show. So I'm sure we'll talk more. But lots of good matchups.
Wait. You're going on the PJ show now?
Yep, I am.
Breaking news.
Philip Pilkington texted me and asked me.
Philip got you on.
Yeah.
I
was working today.
I tried to get Wags on earlier today. He could not join us. He was too busy praying for the Canes' success tonight.
I probably wasn't doing that.
Any other storylines for you, Scott, that you were watching?
Yeah, Clemson, West Virginia, Kentucky. That's a really cool regional. Some good teams there. Like Wags was saying, the Tennessee Wake Forest regional, that could be a very fun second round game if those 2 teams advance. And then just on the opposite side of us, Auburn, NC State, Stetson, Central Connecticut State. The potential for an East Carolina NC State Super Regional in Raleigh, I guess it's still in play. But yeah, I mean, I think NC State could possibly go in and they get Stetson in that first game, who I think is good, but like certainly beatable for NC State. Maybe even the caliber of team that you hold your ace back for. trying to win the regional. So Auburn NC State on Saturday night could be a very, very fun game. And, you know, Bristol Carter does have his magic against ACC teams, so it'll be fun to watch that. And then I'm still hoping for East Carolina to play a super regional in Raleigh because I think that would be as raucous of an environment as you could possibly have. And what better way to break down the door to Omaha than to do it at Doak Field?
If VCU goes through Florida, Coastal, and NC State to make it to Omaha, that would be a hell of a story. Or just the Bristol Carter revenge game. You got a lot of potential storylines just across the regional landscape. It feels like Louisville and Vanderbilt are always in the same region. They're always paired together.
Yeah, we can touch on that. Like I do hate the fact that it's the same teams against each other in these regionals all the time. You know, it's just I get the whole 400 miles. If it's over 400 miles, the NCAA does have to pay to fly teams wherever. And it seems like the teams they're willing to pay to fly are always like SEC teams or ACC teams or, you know, the old big Pac-12 teams. But I would just love for them to seed the field 1-64, especially now that the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big 12 all have so many teams in their league and getting so many teams in, you know, ACC too. But just seed it 1-64, and if there's two teams from the same conference in the same regional, it just is what it is.
We did see, speaking of teams that have to fly, North Carolina somehow got Oklahoma and Nebraska. I feel like, you know, we did. I didn't agree with. I didn't agree with. I'll get to that super chat in a minute. With North Carolina not being a top four, but they may have caught a break with the regional draw. Like Oklahoma has improved, Wags, but this is a pretty favorable draw for your Tar Heels.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Holy Cross is a good draw as a 4, but you know, Nebraska was not going to be in the tournament. They were a preseason top 25 team, and that's another discussion they shouldn't have been. But that's a team that has some pieces, and they're well coached. I like Will Bolt a lot. But if Carolina goes up against Oklahoma, and Kyson Witherspoon might be the best right-handed pitcher in the country, and he's their ace for Oklahoma. And so it's a question for them. Does Oklahoma try to get past Nebraska without using Witherspoon, and then potentially you have Witherspoon against Carolina, which is probably their best chance. But, you know, that's their problem. Don't really care. I'll be watching them either way. But yeah, I was very surprised Carolina wasn't a top 4, and I know that people are going to call me a UNC fan for that. But the ACC tournament champions, and I think they finished short of the ACC regular season by half a game, and they had less 1 or 2 games less played than Georgia Tech. They deserve top 4. They should have been on over Auburn, and you know, Auburn, their RPIs too, and it feels like this year they kind of went back towards like strictly RPI for the most part with a couple of exceptions. But I was very surprised when they announced the top 4 this morning and Carolina wasn't there.
Yeah, I had them as my 2 seed in my preview, so that I put together after our show last night where I had been drinking to celebrate the Pirates winning the conference championship. But yeah, I do think that UNC being the 5th overall seed was honestly, when I saw that, I thought that might mean that we would end up there. But yeah, I do agree with Wags. An ACC near regular season champ that wins the ACC tournament with the wacky format that they have. I guess they changed it some this year, but still, and they smoked Clemson in the championship game too. So I was very surprised to see them that far down.
All right, Bruce Willis has given us a $5 super chat, and we have to share all super chats. He says, "Screw Bristol Carter. I will say, Bristol Carter, good dude. I like him a lot. I understand why he left, but if it comes down to ECU versus Auburn, I will. We'll see. We'll just see how the cards shake out. That would be a good storyline. And I do think Bristol Carter was like built to be an ECU Pirate the way he plays the games, but for whatever reason it didn't work out. He transferred to Auburn. I haven't seen lately what his numbers were like. I know he started the year hitting leadoff, then kind of fell off a little bit, and I think he had a little bit of a resurgence, but obviously on a top 4 team. So good for Bristol and good for the Pirates. I don't really know what to add there, but I had to share Bruce Willis's Super chat. Thanks for supporting the program, Bruce, aka Buck Wild. All right. We have, I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Wags getting shredded again. Somebody said that that's got to be the most viewed printer in Greenville, which if you're watching our live feed, you can
Damn
see it in the
right.
background.
And
Most famous printer.
I'm in Raleigh, so technically it would be the most viewed printer in Raleigh.
I'm
But
sure
the
it's the
views are
same
from
one you had. Yeah.
Sorry, CJ. I don't expect you to get stuff correct.
Les says he loved beating Connor Rasmussen. So
Yeah, we
for-
finally got
foreigners
one back
everywhere.
on him.
It's
I mean, he's been eating us alive for 2
took
years.
7 chances.
And Corey Glore. We were. I was
Man.
borderline like starting to write up a book on the curse of Corey Glore because I mean it felt like when he left us and went to Tulane, they shot up the sports world and we just fell apart. But we got one back.
Yeah, and Corey didn't text me back. I texted him about the stupid fence in right field, but he never texted me back. Granted, he was mid broadcast, but I think he's a little salty. If you're watching, Corey, I love you, buddy. Kaysen says if we win, we are getting absolutely destroyed Sunday night, Steven. If ECU sweeps the regional, all I can say is y'all will see me somewhere in Myrtle Beach. We might do a live podcast with me partying in Myrtle Beach. How about that?
Get out to Bullies at Barefoot Landing and have a good time like I do every late summer, early fall.
I will say that the best part of this year, or the best part of ECU being a regional, guys, is I love getting home, and I love it even more now ECU's playing the noon game. I I love that East Carolina, when they're in the postseason, like I want to watch every single regional game. So was it squeeze play, extra innings? Do we know the official
Squeeze
name
play?
of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
7 innings live. So I think it's what they call it sometimes, but yeah.
If you
That
could
channel
mute,
is the GOAT.
if you could mute Mark Rooney the whole time or Mike Rooney.
It's better that you got his name wrong.
Well, Mark Etheridge and Mike Rooney combined.
I feel like this year we get 3 West Coast regionals too. UCLA, Oregon State. Like we're gonna be up at midnight watching whoever's in that regional. You know, I'm gonna
Some
be
fun ones there too.
I'm gonna be tuned in for UC Irvine, Arizona State at 9 p.m. on Friday. I mean, that's gonna be electric. Like this is what we live for. Oregon, Utah Valley at 9 p.m. So I just love this time of year when the Pirates are in it. Like I was kind of pissed today because I'm like, man, I was kind of looking forward to some time off, relax. But the more I think about it, I'm just like, let's do it, man. Let's freaking dive in. Chad Tracy says, runt, bunt, ball, baby. Checks in with a super chat from the GOAT, ECU legend, Chad Tracy. Chad, we're still waiting for that ball to land that you hit in the super regional against Tennessee. I was there as a young kid. That ball was absolutely mashed. So one of the GOATs for East Carolina baseball, no doubt. Appreciate you tuning in today, man, and supporting the program. I guess, as Chris says, Mark Etheridge is the worst. That guy does just gag on the SEC for an hour straight on the Nerdcast. I couldn't listen to it anymore today. Any thoughts on Mark Etheridge?
I just fast forwarded through it just to see where they would place us. It's just this is an SEC team, and they deserve to be in. Like I just the whole. It is funny to me that when the bubble teams that get in and the seeding favors the SEC, the whole like the man on the committee thing doesn't matter so much anymore, and the committee did the greatest job they've ever done. Like I think I saw and one of the D1 guys give them an A+ on the seeding this year. It just amazes me that
because they didn't screw any Big Ten or
right.
big teams. Yeah,
because Oklahoma State got in with 28 wins. Like what are we doing? Like I'd much rather see a team like UConn, the third best team in their league or second best team in their league, depending on how you look at it, get a chance to play for a national title than the 7th best team out of the Big 12 or the 9th best team out of the SEC. I mean, you're in the SEC, you already have every advantage. It just doesn't sit right with me to not give, Big East and Sun Belt teams that are already disadvantaged an opportunity to prove how good they are when you're giving 10 plus SEC teams a chance already.
All right, last question, then we'll get into our predictions so we don't go all night. So Wags can focus on the end of the Canes game so you can watch them blow it. It'd be kind of epic to see him blow it with him on the live feed. But Ashley says, talking bubble, whose spot do you think we took? I'm thinking Virginia. Who did you have as the last team out, Wags?
Gosh, I couldn't tell you, but I had teams like Xavier, I think, was my first team out personally. But the committee, their first 4 out, Southeastern Louisiana was the first team out, and I think their AD is the chairman of the committee. But after them, it was Troy, UConn, and Virginia. Those were the first 4 teams out. So
I think Virginia was a little far down.
Yeah.
They're like 60-something in RPI, but they had a ton of ACC wins.
Yeah, and they had one less ACC series too. So Virginia definitely was in there, but it's, there were 4 stolen bids, including ours, and 3 if you don't count Cal Poly because they were on the bubble already because they were about 30 in RPI, but they don't have a resume. So 3 or 4. So it was definitely one of those 4 teams that we took for sure. But I'm going to go UConn. We took UConn's bid for the old AAC rivalry.
Civil conflict.
Let's get into our predictions, however you want to phrase it. Predictions, as I just said. Prediction time. Let's do it. Conway Regional. We will make our prediction on how we think the regional plays out, and then we will come back and do a bold prediction. So, who wants to go first here? Conway Regional. What do you guys got?
I'm ready.
All right,
yeah.
Reg.
So I think that it's going to be a tight game, at least for a while, on Friday against Florida. But I do ultimately believe that Florida is going to get the win in that game. But I think it's going to be a respectable showing for ECU. I don't think it's going to be one of those blowouts. But I think Florida wins that one, and Coastal wins their game, and ECU matches up with Fairfield. They beat Fairfield in the elimination game. They move on to face a loser with Coastal Florida. I think Florida beats Coastal. We face Coastal, and I think Coastal does beat us. So I have us going 1-2, but I think it's going to be a respectable effort. I don't think we're going to get blown out in any of the games, and I think it's going to be a hard-fought game on Friday. And the game on Coastal, we'll see where the pitching's at that point, but it's another one of those things. I think we're going to be right there in it.
All right. Scott Lorbatcher, what you got?
I'm going to go similar to Wags. I think we play Florida tight and they win it late. Then, we play Fairfield game 2 and that's a win. Then I do think we end up playing Coastal in the 3rd game, but I think we beat Coastal in game 3 and make a regional final. And you know what? I think we beat Florida in game 1. And they beat us in game in the game 7. So
we were all waiting. We're all waiting to see if he's going to do it again.
I don't think we could win a 5th game over a weekend, especially not against Florida. But I do think that teams often pitch off in that first game if they have to be beaten twice, and I think that's what Florida will do, and then they'll take it home in the regional final. But a valiant effort if this East Carolina team can find themselves in a regional final. That's definitely something to be proud of.
I was going to have basically the same exact prediction as Wags, but I am going to go in a different direction. I've kind of talked myself into this. ECU defeats Florida in game 1 all day. I think they do it. I think the Pirates are going to throw both Ethans at Florida. Ethan Norby and Ethan Young find a way to win that game. I do think Coastal is going to win their opener. They're going to learn from their 2023 debacle, losing a rider and having to storm back through the losers bracket and try to come back that way. And I think ECU beats Florida, sets up an epic showdown on Saturday night against Coastal Carolina. I just think if that's the matchup, Coastal's pitching in Game 2 would be a step above ECU. Plus, you have home field. I give the edge to Coastal in that game. And then you would have to face Florida coming off a loss. And I think then you go 1-2. So I have ECU going 1-2, but I have them beating Florida to get, like in many cases, usually that Saturday night winners bracket game is the regional championship. If you look at the numbers, like I think 80-something% of the time, the team that wins that game. So I do hope if ECU wins it, obviously they would win Game 2 because I think it's tough to come back from that Saturday night loss and play early the next day. But I think ECU beats Florida. And if we did that, I mean, that would be a pretty awesome achievement in itself. Obviously, wouldn't win the regional, but that's my official prediction. All right, so Child Police says ECU will beat Florida and Coastal. Sean Jenkins is going to get it done. Bruce Willis says, I am optimistic about the ECU against a power pitcher like Florida's ace. And CJ says, IGO scenario, low-key might be the worst-case scenario. Give everyone hope off the first game and fizzle out from there. Hey, house money, CJ. Buy in. Chris says, any chance the podcast does live during the weekend / daily recaps? I don't think so. I mean, I guess we could do like a 5-minute podcast. I don't know how y'all feel about that. We're all going to be busy as hell, I assume.
That might be tough.
Yeah, that's a hard no, it sounds like.
Wags doesn't have children, so he could probably do it. We'll let Wags handle it.
Wags can do a solo podcast.
I will probably be watching on my phone from Bethel, North Carolina on Saturday. So not sure if I'm going to be in a position to do that.
The Bethel internet's just like your
follow
own
us
there.
all along on Twitter or X, and I'm sure we will be providing a lot of our opinions there over the weekend.
Wags will be too busy. He's really going to be in Chapel Hill. Don't let him fool you. All right, bold predictions, guys. Who wants to go first?
Yeah. So I think the biggest story for me coming out of Clearwater was the performance of Sean Jenkins. So he came through, and I think he won you the conference tournament. He got you to the postseason with his start, and I think he's going to follow it up. And I don't know when he's going to start this weekend, but I do think he will get another start. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a second game, but that's not part of the prediction. But I think he's going to go 5 innings, and as the Canes just score to go up 2-0. And Sean Jenkins will give you 5 innings and give up 2 runs or less. And I think that's going to be a really good building block heading into the offseason.
Scott?
You know what? I was also going to go Sean Jenkins. So now I have to Price is Right, $1 Wags, and say Jenkins will go 7 innings, 1 run or less.
Wow.
Now, just to clarify, is this the
In
entire week? Okay.
You put in 1 game.
All right. I am
You
going to
don't
go
have 5 strikeouts. I'm adding
5
that.
strikeouts. Okay. I have ECU beating Florida, so that calls for Ethan Norby. He has had 1 double-digit strikeout game this year. That was a 19K performance against Coastal Carolina. He will have double-digit strikeouts against the Florida Gators and pick up a win to lead them to a victory. So that is my bold prediction. It's going to be funny when Norby doesn't even throw this game.
Is that 10 strikeouts in 1 game against Florida, or he makes a second appearance against Florida?
That is, I'm going 1 game to clarify. Fair question, though. Fair question.
Should we do hitter bold prediction since we all went pitcher? Double
Sure.
down.
Why not? We're in the postseason. House money.
2 homer weekend for Colby Wallace.
I'm going to go Walker Barron will hit a home run.
Walker Barron. Let me write it down.
Bold.
That way, when we
Scott is taking notes.
Because every week we're like, "What was our bold prediction?"
No goal for the Canes. Just came back. Offside.
Nice.
This is what happens when you watch on no volume.
I'm going to go with Dixon Williams 4 extra base hits over the regional.
All right. All our predictions are in, and it is time to close shop. Again, appreciate everybody tuning in. Bob Gagnon, Brian Wallace, Noah Callum, A. Wynn in Florida, Bruce Willis, and Chad Tracy. We had some controversy over if it was the actual Chad Tracy. I don't know if it was. This person was dedicated to faking Chad Tracy, but appreciate everybody's support, and hopefully, I tell you what, if ECU somehow wins this regional, we'll be back at some point Sunday, even if it's an impromptu. Obviously, they could win in regional on Monday, but if they somehow win it Sunday, we would do an impromptu live from Myrtle Beach. Casey and Ramaley would join me, and then we'll get Wags and Scott on somehow. But it's time, gentlemen. Let's play some postseason baseball.
Let's do it.
All right. It's time to also go work out some more so the Pirates can keep winning. For Scott Lorbatcher and Jonathan Wagner, I'm Stephen Igo. Appreciate everybody tuning in to the Hoist the Colors podcast. We'll see you on Myrtle Beach. I know I'll be down there. You guys not going, right?
I will not be.
Okay. I'll see y'all down there. Hit me up, and we'll try to get together. See y'all in Myrtle, and we'll see what the Pirates do heading into their 35th appearance in the NCAA postseason. Till next time.